So today we are doing the chapter 13, and chapter 13 is about the endocrine system. Endocrine system, the first thing that we need to understand is what is it in the first place? What is the endocrine system in the first place? And endocrine, endo means in, inside, exo means out, crine means secretion. So endocrine means secretion inside. Exocrine means secretion outside. What does inside and outside means? It means if we have a gland, like if you look at this, and I'll go back to the slide, the previous slide. If you look at this picture right here, you will see that this is a gland. The gland, generally speaking, have these glandular cells that are usually cuboidal cells, and here the cells are secreting their secretion in the lumen here, and then you have a duct. So that duct will take the secretion outside. So we call it exo. Exo means outside because you have a duct. And if that's the case, it will take the secretion to a surface. But otherwise, if you do not have a duct, like this group of cells here that are still secreting something similar to secretion, which is a hormone in this case, it will not find the duct to take it out. So it will leak its content inside, nothing to take it out. So if that's the case, it will be secreted in between the cells, and then it will move until it reaches the blood, and it's going to go in the blood until it reach their destination. So this is the difference, the main difference between endocrine and exocrine. Endo means internal, internal. Exo means external. So what are the differences? The endocrine glands that we're doing now, they are ductless, and that's why they secrete the secretion inside. And these secretions are called hormones. How about the exo? The exo, they do have a duct, so the secretion goes out, and the name of the secretion will depend on what type of glands are we talking about. So it can be anything, something like sweat glands are exocrine secretions because the sweat glands, they have ducts that take the secretions out to the surface of your skin, for example. And so on, and as long as you have a duct, it will take it outside, and we call that exocrine. So these are the main differences that we need to know about endocrine and exocrine. And this is an example here, thyroid gland, for example. The thyroid gland, the cells just look like this. So they are going to secrete their secretions, and they will not find a duct to take it out. So the secretions will stay endo, and it will start to collect until it reaches the blood, and it's going to like swim in the blood until it reaches the destination. This is number one. Number two, I mentioned before when we talked about homeostasis, and remember that all these chapters are connected somehow. It's not like completely separate. So when we talked about the homeostasis and when we talked about the nervous system, we mentioned that both the endocrine and the nervous system, both of them are the managers of homeostasis. These are the managers of the body. They manage the whole entire body. What's the difference between the nervous system and the endocrine system? Since both of them are managers, what's the difference then? The difference is the nervous system is a fast acting one. So it is fast acting. Okay. Sorry. I don't know what's jumping, but just going back to this. So the nervous system is a fast acting, like you touch something and you remove your hand right away. If there is something like you see something, somebody's like attacking you or something, immediately you are going to your sympathetic nervous system is going to kick in, and immediately you will see your heart going fast, racing, and your respiratory rate goes up. You speed up your respiration and so on. This is an immediate management or immediate effect. This is the nervous system. The endocrine system, on the other hand, which is our focus in chapter 13, is a slow responding one. It can take from seconds to hours. So it's not an immediate thing. Example of that is, what if your calcium in the blood goes down, for example? Are you going to respond immediately in a second and calcium goes up immediately? Of course not. It's not going to happen. You have to take some time to pick up the signal and to actually form or make the hormone. In this case, it's parathyroid hormone, and then you're going to secrete it, and it's go to the blood and go to the bone and so on until it gives the effect. That will actually take some time. So this is the first difference and the most important difference, which is speed nervous system and slow endocrine system in managing the homeostasis. Other than that, in the nervous system, the cells are neural cells, and the endocrine system are glandular epithelium. That epithelium that I showed you, which is like this epithelium right here, this is called glandular epithelium. Most likely it's cuboidal in shaped. The secretions are different because even though both of them are chemical signals, but the nervous system, we call it neurotransmitter, and we cover that heavily. And on the endocrine system, it is the hormones. The nervous system, you work on the postsynaptic cells. Like there are two cells, two neural cells, the end of one and the beginning of the other one. And so it work on the postsynapse, while in the endocrine system that we're going to cover, it's going to work on target cells that are far away from where it was secreted. Obviously, nervous system take like a second or something, and endocrine system can take like hours. The action of the nervous system is very brief. So like you touch something, you move, it's over, it's done. The endocrine system, it takes time to start and it takes time to go away. So the duration of action is a little bit longer. So here it is, the difference. Here is a neuron, and at the end of the neuron, you can have another neuron here, or you have a muscle in this case, which we call it the postsynapse. Post means after, pre means before. So here is the dendritis, the body, the axon terminal, until you go collateral, synaptic naps, and so on. So this whole yellow neuron, this is the presynaptic neuron or the presynapse. And if you have a muscle here, or if you have another neuron, this is called the postsynaptic cells. Whether it is a muscle cell or a neural cell, in both cases, they're in a neurotransmitter that is secreted and work on the postsynapse. Here you secrete, and the secretions go to the blood and go to the target cells that are far away from, it doesn't have to be that far away, but it's not in the same organ. So it's usually secreted from one gland, go to the blood, and reach the target cells. So we are going to cover multiple endocrine glands. There are a lot of them, but these are the major ones, not the only ones. We will have more than that. But these are the major ones right here. Hypothalamus and the pituitary. Let me start with those two because the hypothalamus is basically the big boss. This is like the president of the whole system. Pituitary gland, on the other hand, is like the vice president. It is assisting the president, literally. Hypothalamus is the general manager, and the pituitary gland is the assistant manager. Anything else are just like employee in this system here. We will have a lot of details, but I just want you to be on track and to understand, generally speaking, what are we talking about here. I'm talking about a group of glands, a lot of glands all over the body. All these glands secretes hormones. But who is managing all these hormones? The big boss is hypothalamus. and the vice president is the pituitary gland. And then all these glands are going to secrete various secretions that we will talk about. So you have the pineal gland, we'll talk about it, thyroid, parathyroid, you have the thymus, the adrenal gland, including the cortex and the medulla, you have the pancreas, you have the ovaries, the testes in males, and so on. The big ones are after the hypothalamus and pituitary are thyroid, adrenal, and pancreas, but we are going to talk about every single endocrine gland. Now, what's in common between all these is that all of them, all glands, all endocrine glands, they secrete hormones. Like I mentioned in the beginning, the difference between the endocrine and exocrine. The endo, there is no ducts. So like here, it secretes the secretions endo, nothing to take it out. And then it will reach the blood. So what are you secreting and what's going to reach the blood? It's called the hormone. So the hormone is, since there is no duct, it will be secreted and it will reach the extracellular spaces, which are these cell spaces in between the cells. And it was going to move in between the cells, until it finds a capillary or something and goes in, and it will move in the blood until it reach the final destination. The secretions that are going to be secreted from each one of those is something that you have to memorize. You have to remember all these names. And I mentioned that hypothalamus is the big boss. This is the president of the endocrine system. So obviously, being the president, it's going to secrete the basic secretions here are basically, it is hormones, but it is orders. It's not hormones that are going to do an actual work. It's orders. I'm spreading orders. And these orders are not going to go directly into all of these endocrine glands. It's not. It needs to go to the anterior pituitary gland, which is like the vice president. And the vice president will take these orders, and the anterior pituitary is going to resort it, rewrite it. It's going to write it again in a language that these endocrine glands understand. So these names here, CRH, which is corticotropin releasing hormone. Unfortunately, you need to remember these names because you will definitely see it in your exam. So you need to know all these secretions. Like I can give you a question, something like which of the following or all of the following are secretions or hormones coming from the hypothalamus except, and I can give you like corticotropin releasing hormone, gonadotropin releasing hormone, growth hormone releasing hormone, and growth hormone, for example, or prolactin. Which one of those is not? It's prolactin or growth hormone. So you need to know what is secreted from each gland. Only those two that have a lot of secretions. Other than that, it's either one or two. The other glands are secreting one hormone or two hormone. These are the only two that have a lot of hormones that you need to know. So what are you secreting here? These are orders. Again, it does not have an immediate effect. It is hormone that is intended just to give orders. But this is just, let's say like these are orders are not understandable language. You need to send it to the anterior pituitary. The anterior pituitary is going to read these orders and it's going to rewrite it, which is this part here. It's going to rewrite it in a language that the glands can actually understand. So let's say it this way. So here is the big boss or the president, hypothalamus, is secreting CRH. What's CRH? Corticotropin releasing hormone. What does it mean? Cortico means cortex. This is referring to the adrenal cortex. Adrenal. Renal means kidney. Ad means above. Adrenal kidney. I'm sorry, the adrenal gland is the gland above the kidney. This is the translation. Adrenal or suprarenal. Renal is referring to the kidney. Adrenal or suprarenal, both of them means on top of the kidney. So on top of your kidney, you have a gland. The name is adrenal or suprarenal. This gland, we will discuss it later, it's coming, but I just want to make sense of the name. So this gland It consists of two parts. There is a cover inside, and we call it the cortex, and there is a medulla or a core inside that we call it the medulla. Cover and core. Cover that's outside, we call it the cortex, and the core inside is called the medulla. So this cortex here is the one that's a target of the corticotropin releasing hormone. Cortico means the cortex. Tropin means stimulating. Or trophic to something, means it's going to stimulate something or make it grow or make it make more of the function, stimulating the function and so on, tropin. So corticotropin releasing hormone, this is the hormone that will result in the adrenal cortex to work. Gonadotropin releasing hormone, gonado means gonads, and gonads is an umbrella that means the sex organs, whether we're talking about testes in males or ovaries in females. Both of them together, we call it gonads. So gonado means gonad. Gonadotropin means it's going to stimulate the gonads. If you're a female, your gonads are ovaries. If you're a male, your gonads are the testes. So these hormones are going to target the testes. But again, this is not an understandable language. And you will see that these secretions will go to the anterior pituitary gland, and then the anterior pituitary is going to interpret the orders and rewrite some of them. Thyrotropin releasing hormone. Thyro is coming from the thyroid. Tropin, I mentioned it twice, stimulate the growth of something. So this is going to result in thyroid. So far we got the thyroid, we got the adrenal cortex, we got the gonads. Other than that, you also have these hormones. These hormones are going to, it's not going to the endocrine organs that's all over the body. These are ones that will go to the anterior pituitary itself, because the anterior pituitary, even though it's the vice president, but it is secreting some hormones on its own. So it will say like, okay, I'm giving orders the whole day long, but I can participate as well. Why don't I make some secretions just like the other employee, or just like the other glands that are working hard? Like thyroid gland is secreting thyroid secretion. Parathyroid is secreting parathyroid hormone, and so on. Why don't I participate? Besides giving orders, I'm going to help secreting a couple of hormones. Both hypothalamus and pituitary are going to say that. So we'll see some secretions that, beside these that are orders, it's going to secrete some other secretions, and I'll talk about it. But for now, 1, 2, 3, 4, these four are not going to go to the other glands. It's orders to the pituitary, to the anterior pituitary itself. So let's just start with those three. 1, 2, and 3 is this one here. These are the ones that will go to the anterior pituitary, and the anterior pituitary is going to rewrite the order. So let's say corticotropin releasing hormone, it's targeting the cortex. It's going to go to the anterior pituitary, and the anterior pituitary will say, okay, hypothalamus, okay, president, what do you want? I want to stimulate the adrenal cortex. Okay, I got it, but I'm going to rewrite it. So it's going to make adrenocorticotropic hormone, or ACTH. And this is the also known as corticotropin. And this is the one that's actually going to the adrenal cortex and give them the order to secrete its secretions. The other thing is thyrotropin releasing hormone. This is targeting the thyroid, but the hypothalamus give orders that need to go to the anterior pituitary, and anterior pituitary is going to rewrite the order. So now what's actually going to go to the thyroid after the thyrotropin releasing hormone is secreted in the hypothalamus? It is thyroid stimulating hormone, or TSH. This is the one that's going to go to the thyroid gland to stimulate the thyroid gland. Other than that, the third one is gonadotropin releasing hormone. It's going to target the gonads, but it needs to go here first. And in response to that, the anterior pituitary is going to secrete luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone. So this one is one order, which is gonadotropin releasing hormone, or GHRH, even though it's one. But when it goes to the anterior pituitary is going to translate it into two, not just one. LH and FSH, both of them are in response to gonadotropin releasing hormone. The other names for those are folitropin, and the luteinizing hormone is called eutropin. And both of those are going to go to the gonads. Beside those, it's going to secrete growth hormone releasing hormone and prolactin release inhibiting hormone that will go to the anterior pituitary, because the anterior pituitary, I just mentioned that the anterior pituitary, beside the orders, it's going to secrete some hormones on its own, on its spare time. And this is the growth hormone and prolactin. Growth hormone and prolactin. So what's growth hormone and prolactin? Are these orders? No, it's not orders. These are actual hormones that will have a direct effect, just like the other glands, just like anything else. So beside the orders, it's going to secrete growth hormone, prolactin. Growth hormone releasing hormone that come from the hypothalamus is going to stimulate the anterior pituitary to release growth hormone. Prolactin release hormone and prolactin inhibiting hormone, those two are going to control the secretion of prolactin from the pituitary gland. So this is what's going to tell the pituitary gland secrete prolactin or do not secrete prolactin. The abbreviation for each one of those: gonadotropin releasing hormone, GnRH, somatostatin. This is something that's going to inhibit growth hormone. So there is a growth hormone releasing hormone and somatostatin. There is a prolactin secreting hormone and there is prolactin releasing factor. Look at those four. Those four are simply the control of those two secretions coming from the anterior pituitary gland. Growth hormone, hypothalamus have two for those: somatostatin and growth hormone releasing hormone. Those two are going to inhibit and stimulate growth hormone. Prolactin, I have two. One of them is going to release and one of them is going to inhibit. So those four are basically secreted from the hypothalamus just to secrete, to regulate the secretion of growth hormone and prolactin. For each one of those, as you see, there is abbreviation and another name that you need to know, like somatotropin, thyrotropin, corticotropin, growth hormone is GH, LH, PRL, which is prolactin, and so on. So now we talked about the hypothalamus being the president and the anterior pituitary. Since we talked about the anterior pituitary, there is another one on the back that's called posterior pituitary, because the pituitary gland itself consists of two components: anterior component and posterior component. Anterior pituitary, which is the vice president that's going to secrete the orders in response to the orders coming to it from the hypothalamus, while the posterior pituitary is not doing that. It's doing another job. What is that job? Remember, I told you that hypothalamus, even though it is the president, but it's going to make two hormones. These two hormones are called ADH, or an antidiuretic hormone, and oxytocin. Those two, even though the hypothalamus make it, but it's going to store it in the posterior pituitary. So there is a difference between the anterior pituitary, a huge difference. Anterior pituitary is in the management, it's the vice president. Posterior pituitary is just a storage area for the secretions coming from the hypothalamus: antidiuretic hormone and the oxytocin, ADH and OT. The other name for antidiuretic hormone is vasopressin. And yes, you guys need to know, if you see two names, you need to know the two names. So we did so far the hypothalamus, anterior pituitary, and posterior pituitary. Now the other glands. This was in the management level. Other than that, thyroid gland is going to secrete thyroid hormones, which is those two, T3 and T4. T3 is tri means three, triiodothyronine, and T4 is called tetraiodothyronine, also known as thyroxine. So these are the main ones, which are the thyroid hormones. Beside that, it's going to also secrete something called calcitonin. And calcitonin, we talked about it before when we talked about the homeostasis, but let's refresh our information. Calcitonin, calci means calcium. Calcitonin means the hormone that's lowering calcium. Calcitonin, take the calcium down, calcitonin. So it is coming from the thyroid gland. Parathyroid gland is secreting one hormone only, which is the parathyroid hormone, also known as parathormone, PTH. The adrenal gland. I mentioned that the adrenal gland, or the glands on top of the kidney, also known as suprarenal, same thing, consists of cortex on top and the medulla inside. The medulla secrete epinephrine and norepinephrine, also known as adrenaline and noradrenaline. And the abbreviation is NE and EPI. Those two, epinephrine and norepinephrine, this is what's going to dominate the sympathetic nervous system, like the fight, fright, flight that we talked about before. Like if somebody's attacking you, you secrete epinephrine, norepinephrine from the adrenal medulla, and this is going to have a lot of effects that you should know, including like increased heart rate, increased respiratory rate, increased concentration, increased metabolism, dilation of your pupil, dilation of your bronchi, blood go to the muscles, blood go to the brain, and all these. Just think about it. If you are in a dangerous situation, or if somebody's attacking you, or if you're extremely stressed, what's going to happen, and you name it. The cortex, on the other hand, which is the cover from outside, you have different secretions. Aldosterone and cortisol are the most important ones. The cortisol is the very famous one that we say cortisone or hydrocortisone. For the pancreas are going to secrete 3 hormones. And remember, I'm talking about the hormones. I'm not talking about secretions in general, because pancreas secrete also exocrine secretions. So I'm talking about the endocrine part. Pancreas is a dual gland. Remember this. Pancreas is a dual gland, the only one. So every single gland that I talked about so far is endocrine. Pancreas is different. It's a mix. Part of it, which is the big part, the main part of the pancreas, is the exocrine one, and the small islands within the pancreas is the endocrine one. So is the pancreas exo or endocrine? It's both of them. Secretes insulin, secrete glucagon, which is the antagonist of insulin. So insulin decreases blood glucose, glucagon increases blood glucose. So it secretes something and its opposite. It secretes insulin and its antagonist. Plus somatostatin. What's somatostatin? Somato means body. Statin means stasis, to stop it. So this is obviously the opposite of somatotropin, which is growth hormone. Now, this part is not the most important part, so I'm going to summarize it. So I want you to focus with me, because we're not going to spend much time here. So just pay attention to this. Hormones, the nature, can be either steroid hormone, which is lipid, or non-steroid hormone, either steroid or non-steroid. Steroid is lipid soluble. It's lipid, contain lipid. The non-steroid does not contain lipid. Non-steroid, why are we doing this? Because the way they work, like if you already secreted the endocrine secretion or the hormone, and then it travel in the blood and go to their destination or to the target cell, how exactly they are going to work on the cell, how they are going to deliver the order, how they are going to communicate, it depends. Are you talking about something that's steroid in nature or non-steroid? Okay, so if it is a steroid in nature, if you still remember that the membrane of every single cell is 2 layers of phospholipid, so it contains lipid. So lipids interact with lipids. So if this is steroid hormone, it can cross the membrane and it will travel all the way until it go to the nucleus, and it's going to order the nucleus the DNA to make what needs to be done. On the other hand, if this is non-steroid, whether we're talking about amines like amino acids, peptide, which is a chain of amino acids, or proteins, which is a big chain of amino acids, or glycoprotein, which is also protein added with some carbohydrate, whatever it is, any one of those, all of these, what's in common is it's not steroid. It cannot cross the membrane. So how is it going to work? It's going to stay outside of the cell membrane. It cannot cross it. It needs to interact with the membrane itself, with a receptor in the membrane, and then the order will go internally. Like if you have a key for your house, you go in the house and you do whatever you want inside. If somebody is coming, like you have a mail delivery or something, you need to knock on the door and they give you the delivery and then you take care of it. This is the exact difference between the steroid and non-steroid. The steroid is you have the key and you just go in and do whatever you want to do inside. Non-steroid is like a mail delivery. It's coming to you, knock on the door, give you the mail and leave. They cannot enter. And you take it from there and you give it like to your family members and so on. So you take care of it. So steroid hormones, the ones that can actually enter and they have the key, are like the sex hormones, steroid, estrogen, the adrenal cortical hormone, like the cortisol and aldosterone. You need to know just these are examples of steroids. So all what I want you to know here is it steroid or not? What if it is steroid? It will cross and work on the nucleus, on the DNA, to make copies or to create protein. If it is not steroid, it's going to stop like you're a mailman. You're delivering a mail. You're delivering the mail to somebody. So if you do that, you go to the door and you knock on the door and you cannot enter. So I want you to know how they are going to work, if it's steroid or non-steroid. This is number one. Number two, which of those is steroid and which is not. This is what you need to know here. So non-steroid is epinephrine, norepinephrine, growth hormone, oxytocin, and TSH. So these are the examples. So the hormone, whether this hormone is steroid or not, in both cases, it's going to go to the cells, interact with the cells somehow. Like if it's steroid, it will interact, it will actually enter in and go to the nucleus and do something inside. If it is from outside, which is non-steroid, it's going to go to the membrane and then it's going to interact with receptor and do an action there. But it cannot enter anyway if it's not steroid. So what exactly the effect on the target cells? Like you're steroid or non-steroid. You go to the cells, you told the cells what you need to tell them. Whether you enter in and tell them or you stay outside and tell them. In both cases, you're telling the cells what to do. What the cells are going to do. Number one, you're going to change the activity of the enzymes. This is one of the actions. The other thing is the membrane transport. Like you can tell the cells, I'm coming with an order that is coming from the anterior pituitary gland that was coming actually from the hypothalamus, but I'm bringing this from the anterior pituitary, and this order for you is to increase the membrane transport and secrete something more or less or something like that. Now, the question is, if the level of the hormone that's going to the target cell is too low, or if it is too high, how the cells are going to react? Like if the hormones that are going to the cells are just reasonable number, normal number, that's totally fine. But if you're secreting, if you're giving the cells, the target cells, too much or too low, if you're giving them too low, not enough, they are going to respond by something called upregulation. They're going to increase the receptors so they can interact with you as much as possible. Like if somebody's getting a delivery to you and they are knocking in the door like this, you need to do something in order to hear what is this. So you're going to upregulate. If it is too much, somebody's hitting the door like this, you tell them like slow down. So you're going to decrease the receptors to get a reasonable response at the end. Upregulation and downregulation. There is one exception to the rule that I told you, which is steroids enter N, while non-steroid does not enter N, whatever it is, amines, peptides, proteins, whatever it is, it will not enter N. There is one exception here. The exception is thyroid hormone. Thyroid hormone is not steroid, but it still enter. This is an exception because there is a mechanism in the cells that take it and move it in. So this is an exception. So this is what I was just talking about. If this hormone is steroid hormone, it actually can cross the membrane easily. It does have the key. So it goes in and travel all the way to the nucleus, and it will go actually enter inside the nucleus where there are receptors inside the nucleus. It will interact with the receptors, and it's going to affect the DNA, giving order to messenger RNA, and this will be translated into the protein that the cells are supposed to do. On the other hand, if this was a non-steroid, it cannot enter in. So it can knock on the door, interact with the receptor. So this is non-steroid hormone, this purple. It will go like knock on the door or buzz the ring, and it's going to interact. And when you interact with receptors, you will say, okay, thank you, you can leave. I got the message, and I will take care of it. You that's taking the delivery, you are the first one to take that delivery. So we call that the first messenger, which is the receptor itself. And then if that's not your delivery, if it is for your sister, for example, you are going to give it to her and she's going to open it. If there is something inside to her mom or something, she will give it to her and so on. So you're going to do different steps after you take the delivery. But the first one that's going to take the package is the first messenger. And then it will give it to somebody else. This is the second messenger. This somebody else is going to open it and see what's inside and distribute it. This is the third messenger. So we have different messengers. The first one is the receptor itself, which is on the cell membrane. And then the second one is, because of this binding, you're going to activate the G protein that's going to activate an enzyme called adenyl cyclase. Adenyl cyclase will convert ATP to cyclic AMP, and cyclic AMP is the second messenger. So if you're saying like, you take the package, you're the first messenger. You give it to your sister, which is cyclic AMP, this is the second messenger. And then the cyclic AMP is going to activate protein kinase. This is the third messenger, and protein kinase is going to do the action. This is the scenario that's happening, and this is what I want you to know in this part. There are some clinical applications here, and these applications are the abuse of these hormones. So some athletes, they increase their performance by taking either a steroid or a growth hormone or both of them together. Most of the time we hear about this athlete, he was kicked out of the competition because he was taking steroid. Why is he taking steroids, which is one of the hormones? He's taking steroids because steroids stimulate the muscle strength, not the natural way, which is exercise, but the artificial way. It will go and interact with receptors, and as a result of this, it will enter in and go to the nucleus, and it would make a lot of copies, like just I mentioned here. So let's say this is the steroids. That's one of the athlete. One of the athletes is taking. This is steroid. So it will enter his cells, cross the cell membrane, go to the nucleus, interact with the receptors, activating DNA, messenger RNA, and then you're going to make copies of what? Of the muscle cells. You're going to increase the muscle cells, but this is artificial. This is not something that should be done. And it does have actually a harmful effect. It's not just cheating. If you are in a competition or something, it have a lot of bad effects. Steroids that they usually take is some of these reproductive hormones, especially the male hormones, testosterone, for example. If they take it, the issue is if you take testosterone from outside, it's going to suppress your own testosterone. So that will have a bad effect on the long run. It's also going to accelerate the growth of the bones, so the bones will stop growing. if you are in a growing age or something. And it have some other bad effects on the heart, on the liver. Growth hormone, on the other hand, it promote the growth of a lot of things, including, or most importantly, muscles and adipose tissue. It actually stimulates the growth of everything, but it's still artificial. Erythropoietin, erythro means red, which is referring to the red blood cells. Poietin, I mentioned it several times, poiesis, meaning manufacturing, making. So erythropoietin is a hormone that's secreted from the kidney, and it's going to go to the bone marrow in order to make more red blood cells. The problem with that is if you have anemia and you make erythropoietin, you're going to make more cells, which is fine. But if you're taking, if you're abusing that, like some athletes are going to take it to increase their blood supply, the red blood cells, so that they will be more active. This will have a bad effect because if you have a lot of red blood cells, they can get clotted to each other and can make a blood clot and heart attack. Prostaglandin is one of these substances, but this is a paracrine. Para means beside, paracrine. So prostaglandin is a paracrine substance. It acts like a hormone. It's not exactly a hormone. It works like a hormone, very small amounts, and it works paracrine. Remember I told you in the beginning, crine is a suffix that means secretion. Para means beside. So paracrine substance means you secrete it and work on the cells beside it, right beside it. So this is what prostaglandin does. It can regulate the cellular responses to hormones. If this is a hormone that's coming and the cells are responding, prostaglandin can regulate that response by stimulating or inhibiting adenyl cyclase, which is one of these, the second receptor that the one that make the second receptor, which is cyclic AMP. It also promotes inflammation. Let me just tell you something here. If you're taking anti-inflammatory, something like Advil, it suppresses the prostaglandin, by the way. So it will secrete, it will decrease inflammation and pain. So this is prostaglandin. Now, the hormones are secreted, and when these hormones are secreted, it's going like a cascade. Like, let's say, CRH, which is corticotropin-releasing hormone coming from the hypothalamus. It will go to the next, which is the anterior pituitary, and the anterior pituitary is going to secrete ACTH, which is adrenocorticotropic hormone, that will go to the adrenal cortex, and the adrenal cortex will secrete its secretions. There is a limit for that. You cannot be doing that 24/7. Like the whole day long, you're secreting CRH, go to the anterior pituitary, ACTH, adrenal cortex, cortisone, cortisone, cortisone. That's too much. There should be a regulation for that. And the most important regulation, which we talked about before when we discussed the homeostasis, is the negative feedback. So in this scenario that I'm talking about, corticotropin-releasing hormone, or CRH, that's released from the hypothalamus, go to the anterior pituitary underneath, and it's connected with the hypothalamus. And the anterior pituitary is going to secrete ACTH. ACTH go to the adrenal cortex. Adrenal cortex is secreting different secretions, including cortisone. So you end up, after this series of actions, you secrete cortisone, repeat cortisone, repeat cortisone. Now you are accumulating cortisone. You cannot do that unlimited. When you accumulate the cortisone itself, the product, is going to go to the anterior pituitary and say, enough, ACTH. There is a lot of me. And it's also going to the hypothalamus and go, enough of CRH. You're secreting too much and I'm accumulating. This is too much. Stop, stop. So as long as you're stopping the original action, you're opposing the original action, we call that the negative feedback. And this is the most important control of the hormonal secretion. There is another feedback that's called positive feedback. And we also talked about this before, if you still remember, in homeostasis, when we talked about something like the blood clotting or the contractions of the uterus during delivery. This is a positive feedback. Oxytocin contract the uterus is pushing on the baby to go out, dilating the cervix, releasing more oxytocin, going to the uterus, contracting more, pushing the baby more, stimulating the oxytocin more. So more lead to more. So the action or the reaction is more of the action. We call that the positive feedback. So depending on feedback, are you going to oppose the original action or you're going to increase the original action? If you oppose or decrease, this is negative feedback. If you're increasing the original action, this is the positive feedback. And I understand that we talked about it before, but we are repeating that. So we're refreshing our information. Negative feedback can work on the level of the tropic hormones that I talked about, regulating the hormonal secretion. This is the example that I gave you. It also works on the nervous system and the change in the composition of the internal environment. So the nervous system can control. So the tropic hormone is the one that use the negative feedback the most. The nervous system can actually control certain glands. So the nervous system can go to the thyroid gland, for example, and it will make the thyroid gland increase the secretion. So this is a nervous control of the endocrine secretion. The third one is change in the composition. This is a regulation by itself. Example, if you have, this is not the same way that I just mentioned. It's not the product, which is a negative feedback. There is another way, which is called a change composition. So let's give an example here of insulin, for example. Insulin is secreted from the pancreas and go to the blood to decrease glucose level. If the glucose level goes down too much, it will go to the pancreas and say, enough insulin, I'm going down. Or the other way around, if the pancreas is secreting glucagon, which is the antagonist for insulin, and the pancreas is secreting glucagon, increasing glucose, glucose itself will increase, so the composition is changing, which means the blood does not have the same amount of glucose. The composition is different now. And this is, the effect of that is it's going to inhibit the action of the pancreas. This is an example. Other examples are sodium and potassium, for example. If the composition of the blood changing, sodium and potassium are going up or down, this is going to affect different hormones like aldosterone and others that we will talk about. So these are the tropic hormones that I mentioned: hypothalamus, anterior pituitary, peripheral endocrine gland, go to the target organ and do the action. But the gland that's secreting, and the example is, if this was the adrenal cortex and secreting cortisone. Adrenal cortex secreting cortisone, it will go to both anterior pituitary and hypothalamus to slow down. This is negative feedback, and the best example is tropic hormones. On the other hand, if the nervous system is the one that's telling the endocrine system to secrete, then the action itself is the one that's going to inhibit the nervous system in order to stop giving orders to the endocrine glands to secrete the secretions. If this is the change, it will also work at the level of the action. So let's say the action is hyperglycemia here. Hyperglycemia is going to go all the way, changing the composition of the plasma, and this is going to affect the endocrine glands and it's going to respond by either increasing or decreasing. So this is a normal hormonal level. If it is too high, you're going to bring it back down. If it goes down, you'll bring it back up. So this is the homeostasis of the hormone itself, combining both of those, the positive and negative feedback, whether you're going to increase or decrease the secretions. Let me tell you something here that under normal circumstances, the level of your hormones is not 100% fixed. Like it's not 1.2 24/7. Like if I measure your insulin right now, if I measure your cortisone right now, it's not going to be a fixed number. It's not 1.2. After an hour, 1.2. After 5 minutes, 1.2. No, it's fluctuate like this. So it's 1.2. Let's say this is the average, just random number, 1.2. And then it will go like 1.3, and then you bring it back down. So it goes down. It can go under 1.1 and you bring it back up. So even though it is 1.2, this is just the average, but you fluctuate above and under that number, and this is what's actually happening. It's not a flat line. It's never a flat line. You go up and down around the average. And that's why, like, if you guys still remember the pH, I told you that the normal pH is 7.4 plus or minus. This is what we mean, plus or minus 0.5, and it's considered fine. So it goes 7.35, 7.4, 7.45. So this is all within the range because it always fluctuates as long as you're within that range. And that explains, if you go more in the course and you advance more, you will see that 99% of the numbers, if not all of them, are not actual numbers. It's range. They always tell you that. What's a normal blood glucose? Fasting is 70 to 100. What's the number? It's a range. It's not a number. If you're 90, that's okay. If you're 80, that's fine. 95 is okay. So it's always range. Now the pituitary gland, I already mentioned that it has two lobes, anterior lobe and posterior lobe. There is another name that you have to remember. Remember here, I told you, so when you sit in the exam, remember that I already told you. Anytime you see two names, you have to know the two names. So the other name for pituitary gland is neurohypophysis. Hypophysis itself means pituitary, translation, pituitary. Why did you call it neurohypophysis? Why did you call, while this one is called adeno and hypophysis? Hypophysis is pituitary. Why did you call it adeno and why did you call the posterior neuro? This is the control of the secretion. So the hypothalamus contains nerve supply that's going to go to the posterior pituitary and tell them to secrete what was stored there, which is the ADH and oxytocin. So because it's controlled by neurons, we call it neurohypophysis. Adeno, on the other hand, is controlled by secretions, which is adeno. So that's why we call it adenohypophysis. You need to remember those two names. This is the location right here. This is the thalamus. So under the thalamus is this. This is the hypothalamus. And this pink here is a pituitary gland that's located in the bone. So it is very protected inside this cavity of the bone that's called the sella turcica. And there is a connection between the hypothalamus, which is a gray, and the pituitary gland. We also call it hypophysis. And the link in between those two is called infundibulum or stalk. So this is why the name came from, where the name came from. This is the anterior pituitary, and this is the posterior pituitary. Anterior pituitary in the front here, and this is posterior pituitary, which is the other picture. In the anterior pituitary, there are hormones that are secreted and go in this hypophyseal system of blood. So it is, and it's going to control the anterior pituitary, and that's why we call it adenohypophysis. This one here, the hypothalamus is going to have neurons or nerve supply, and nerve supply is going to control the posterior pituitary, and this is where the name neurohypophysis came from. So I hope that that part is clear, where the name came from and how it is controlled. So here it is again, hypothalamus, secrete the releasing hormone. If we're talking about the anterior pituitary, releasing hormones are all this list, CRH, corticotropin releasing hormone, thyrotropin releasing hormone, gonadotropin releasing hormone, the two hormones that control the growth hormone and the two hormones that control the prolactin. All of these are called releasing hormones, all this list that you need to know. And all of this will go to the anterior pituitary, and the anterior pituitary is going to secrete its own secretions that's going to go either to the peripheral endocrine glands, and the glands are going to secrete the secretion, and the level of negative feedback here is going to come from the hormone number 3, which is coming from the peripheral endocrine organ. And I give you an example, and I will give you another example to apply this, to have better understanding. So the hormone number 3 is going to go to pituitary and hypothalamus, and you see this negative here means negative feedback. Let me give you an example here, another example. Hypothalamus is secreting thyrotropin releasing hormone, which is hormone number 1. Thyrotropin releasing hormone go to the anterior pituitary because this thyrotropin releasing hormone is not understandable by the thyroid gland. It does not understand that. So this is going to go to anterior pituitary, and the anterior pituitary, as an example here, is going to translate this into thyroid stimulating hormone, or TSH. And this is going to go to, let's say the example for peripheral endocrine here is the thyroid gland itself. The thyroid gland does understand the anterior pituitary secretion. So it will understand TSH, and it will end up secreting thyroid hormone. Thyroid hormone is hormone number 3. So what's hormone number 1? Thyrotropin releasing hormone, or TRH. What's hormone number 2 from the anterior pituitary? ACTH, TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. Then the thyroid gland, which is the peripheral one, is going to secrete what? Hormone number 3, thyroid hormone. Thyroid hormone will go to the target cells like muscles and any cells in the body. But if it starts to accumulate, it's going to go backwards to the anterior pituitary, or upwards to the anterior pituitary and hypothalamus to slow them down. We already talked about these hormones: thyroid stimulating hormone, ACTH, follicle stimulating hormone, luteinizing hormone. These are releasing hormones. Beside those, you have prolactin and growth hormone. These are direct secretions that have direct actions. So this is just adding up all what we talked about together, and you can go through it to apply what we talked about. Growth hormone that's secreted from the anterior pituitary, prolactin that's secreted from the anterior pituitary. Anything else is just a releasing hormone. Like all of these are releasing hormone. It's just going to go to the target glands and tell them secrete. Like thyroid stimulating hormone, go to the thyroid to stimulate them to secrete thyroid secretion. Adrenocorticotropic hormone, go to the adrenal cortex, and this is where the name came from, adrenocortical, adrenal cortex. So it goes to the adrenal cortex to secrete its secretions. Follicle stimulating hormone and luteinizing hormone, they go to the gonads, and gonads again are testes and ovaries, male or female. So this is the target. So this is for those 4 here. But those 2 are direct contribution from the anterior pituitary. Growth hormone is going to stimulate the cells to enlarge and grow and increase in number and become bigger, because it is growth hormone, the hormone of growth. So wherever it goes, the target is going to grow. What do you mean grow? Grow in number, grow in size, grow in action, grow in metabolism, and so on. On the other hand, prolactin is also secreted from the anterior pituitary, and it is prolactin. Translate. Pro, when you are pro something, means you are with something, or you are stimulating something. Lactin is coming from lactation, which is breast milk. So prolactin stimulate the female breast to secrete the breast milk. And please always translate. Do not, if you try to memorize this, this is hard, I can tell you. Endocrine system is one of the hard systems, but cut it into pieces. Prolactin, adrenocorticotropic, adrenal cortex, the cortex, the cover of the adrenal gland. Adrenal, above the kidney. Cortex. Okay, do you guys get this idea? Adrenocorticotropic. This is a big word. No, cut it. Adreno. Ad means above. Reno means kidney. Adreno, above the kidney. Okay, so we're referring to the gland above the kidney. Are you talking about the cortex or the inside, the medulla? The cortex. So what should I call it? cortico, and what's the action? Tropic. Tropic. Tropic or trophic means stimulate. So always try to understand the meaning, translation. So if we talk about the thyroid hormone as an example, hypothalamus secrete TRH, which is thyrotropin releasing hormone. That's not understandable. The green, not understandable by the thyroid, so we cannot send it to the thyroid. We send it to the anterior pituitary, and anterior pituitary will secrete this blue, that's understandable, TSH, which go to the blood until it reaches the thyroid gland, and the thyroid gland is going to secrete thyroid hormone. Remember, if this thyroid hormone will go to the target cells and it do the action. If this thyroid hormone accumulates, it will go back to both pituitary and hypothalamus to decrease its secretions. We call that negative feedback. Here, the clinical applications are important to know. So you can be asked about dwarfism, giantism, and acromegaly. Let me put those together. And here's what we mean. Growth hormone, simply from the name, it's the hormone of growth. This is the hormone that's going to promote growth. Growth of what? Anything. It go to any target and it will make it grow, generally speaking. Okay? So if you are growing, like if you are under 25, 27, around that age, if you're under that age, you are still growing. The effect of growth hormone on you is different than somebody else who is in the 30s, for example. It's different. Growth hormone, if you are still growing, growth hormone will stimulate your growth, actually stimulate you. It will make you bigger. You get taller. Your height increase. Your body mass increase. So it actually, if you are in that age, if you are a child, especially childhood, and if you're still growing, teenage or something, you're still growing, the growth hormone actually does that effect, which is actual growth. You're getting taller, you increase your height, increase your body build, and so on. You're going to increase the size. But if you are after that age, so you're not growing anymore, growth hormone is not going to do that anymore. That's it. It's not going to do that. What's the effect in adulthood? It's going to increase glucose in the blood, going to increase glucose. Obviously, if you are 6 feet and you are in the age of like 28 or 30, that's it. You're not going to be like 30s, you're not going to be like 6.2, and then in the 40s, you're going to be 7 feet or something. It doesn't happen like this. As long as you reach that 27, 28, especially for the bone growth that stop at this age, around that age, as long as you stopped, that's it. It's over. You cannot grow taller, or your height is never going to increase anymore. So what's the growth hormone doing? Why we still secrete growth hormone? If you're secreting growth hormone in adulthood, normal amount, it's going to do some metabolic effects only. That's it. Metabolic effects. This is if it is normal. So far, I'm just saying the normal. If you got this part, let's change to the abnormal. What if you are secreting less than you should? Are you talking about a child or an adult? Child. Let me tell you this. If you are a child and you do not have enough growth hormone, you will become dwarf. And we know the dwarf, right? So this is called hypopituitary dwarfism. So this is decrease. The size of the body will be smaller, short. You will be a dwarf. Why? Because it's happening in a young age. So that will be a dwarfism. Okay, short stature. So otherwise, everything else is okay. Like those people are completely normal because it's the growth of the bone, of the muscle, of the soft tissues, of the fat, and this is the one that's going to be affected, not the mental functions. It's not going to be affected. It's just he's a short person. This is dwarfism. On the other hand, what if you have increased secretion of growth hormone? The answer is It depends. Are you talking about during childhood? Always. When I ask you about growth hormone, are you talking about childhood or adult? Decrease. Childhood, dwarfism. Adults, nothing much. Just some metabolic effects, something like decreased blood sugar, something like that. It's not a huge deal. What if it is increased secretion of growth hormone? It depends. Are you talking about in childhood or puberty? In childhood. If that's the case and you're still growing, you become giant, and we call that giantism. Giantism, and people can actually go to 8 feet or even more than that. And if you're like say, why would somebody have increased secretions of growth hormone? Why the secretions are not normal? Most likely it's a tumor. It doesn't have to be cancer. It can be a benign tumor, which we call it adenoma. It can be just a benign tumor, and this benign tumor in the pituitary gland is secreting too much growth hormone. So instead of doubling the size in a year, or not doubling the size, like if you, let's say you're increasing 10 inches per year, for example, okay, you're going to make it 20 inches per year. So you're going to grow dramatically, and we call that giantism. How about if you increase your growth hormone, like you have a tumor in the pituitary gland, a benign tumor, but it is secreting too much growth hormone in adulthood? Well, you cannot get taller. Your body are not going to be huge or anything because your epiphysis already fused. You cannot. Let me tell you this. Growth hormone at higher level after adulthood, it can have some effects on certain parts only, not the whole body. Specifically, the forehead, the nose, the mandible, the hands, the heart. These parts of the body only, not the whole body, can still grow only, not as a response to the growth hormone, no, as a response to higher than normal amount of growth hormone. And the best example of that is Abraham Lincoln. If you ever seen his picture when he was a child and when he was a young adult and then before he died, if you compare these pictures, look at his features, you will see the forehead protruding, the nose is bigger, the jaw is bigger, the fingers are big. So these are the ones that can actually continue to grow after adulthood. Only, not because of the normal growth hormone, because of increased amount of growth hormone. Abraham Lincoln had pituitary adenoma. It's a benign tumor in the pituitary gland. He didn't know what it is until he become acromegalic like this. Posterior pituitary gland secrete two secretions. It's store and secrete. But where do we make it? Remember this. Where do we make it? In the hypothalamus. Where do we store it and secrete it from? It is the posterior pituitary. So I wanted to make that distinction, and I want that to be clear. What are the two hormones that the posterior pituitary gland store and secrete? ADH, also known as vasopressin, and oxytocin. Oxytocin, this is the easy one because we talked about it before. Oxytocin, especially if you are a lady hearing me, you probably know Pitocin, if you're familiar with this. Like if during delivery and the baby is not the uterus is not contracting that much and the baby is taking longer time, they can inject that Pitocin in your saline and they will tell you that's going to make the contractions more. So this oxytocin is to contract, increase contraction. Contractions of what? Of the uterus. It's number one. In the muscles around the glands in the breast, the mammary glands, that's going to squeeze out the milk. And this is a reflex that happens if this is a baby and he's suckling on the nipple of the breast. There is a reflex with the nervous system that goes and release oxytocin. Oxytocin go to these muscles surrounding the lobules and it's going to push out the milk. When the baby stop doing that, stimulating the nipple by suckling the milk, the oxytocin will not be released anymore and there is no muscles contraction. The milk will stop going out and so on. So this is oxytocin, two functions, uterus and the muscles around the mammary gland lobules or the mammary lobules. ADH from the name, anti-diuretic hormone, against, diuretic, di means a lot, uretic means urine. So what's diuretic? Diuretic is a lot of urine. So is that hormone responsible for a lot of urine? No, it's it's against that. So ADH basically is going to reabsorb your water back. There's a lot of water go to the kidney, but it's not all secreted in the urine. You take most of it, more than 90%. You reabsorb that back into the blood. Otherwise, you'll be drinking like a barrel of water per day. Why we're not drinking that much water? Simply because when the blood goes to the kidney, the water part goes in the kidney, but we don't lose it in the urine because ADH will make the kidney take it back. We call that reabsorption of water. So when you take the water back, you're making less urine. So it's anti-diuretic. Diuretic, a lot of urine. It's against that. It could have been easier than that. They can call it something easier, but this is what they used to call it, anti-diuretic. So this is ADH, also known as vasopressin. So what's the function of vasopressin? Reabsorption of water from the kidney. Reabsorption of water from the kidney. As a result of that, you make less urine. This is what we already talked about, summary. You can summarize from that. It's nice. It can help you, but we did it already. I'm not going to repeat. Next gland is thyroid gland. Thyroid gland, I mentioned that in the table in the beginning, but again, you have T3 and T4. T3 is called T3, iodothyronine. It's thyronine with 3 iodine. T4 is tetra means 4. Tetraiodothyronine. It's 4 iodine with thyronine. This is what it means. But the more famous name is thyroxine. Instead of tetra, they call it thyroxine. So both of those are called the thyroid hormone, but this one is an additional one that comes from different cells, but still from the thyroid gland, which is calcitonin. Where is the thyroid gland located? It's located right here. This is, if you can see me here, this is my Adam's apple right here, which is the larynx, the cartilage of the larynx. And then if you go down, you will see another cartilage and then the trachea. It's located right here in the larynx, on the larynx, like on the upper, right under the Adam's apple. This is where it's located. And look at this picture right here. This is the larynx, and it is here covering part of the larynx and part of the trachea. What kind of cells secrete each one of those? The cells that secrete calcitonin are called C cells. C is the first letter of calcitonin, which is extrafollicular cells. The follicle cells itself, they secrete T3 and T4. What's the difference between, let me say it this way. What is the function of thyroid hormone in general? And please understand this, because it will make sense when we talk about the abnormalities. It will make sense. Just follow me. What is the function of thyroid hormone? It accelerates the whole metabolism of your body. Remember this sentence, and it will give you a clue to everything else. One more time, thyroid hormone increase overall metabolism of the body. So if you think about this sentence, increase overall metabolism, what does it mean? Increase all the reactions of the body. So what? If you increase all the reactions of the body, you will need more oxygen to do these reactions. So you breathe more. So one of the functions is to increase metabolism, which increased reaction, which is using more oxygen, which is increasing respiration. And in order, because you need more oxygen, in order to carry this oxygen, you need to accelerate the heart rate itself, which is one of also of the effects. If you're increasing this, you're making more energy. So it increase energy. When you make more energy, you're going to lose a good part of it in the form of heat. So it will increase your body temperature. So put all of these together, and this is going to be the action of the thyroid hormone. Which one, T3 or T4? Both of them are doing the same thing. The only difference is T3, it has one less iodine, so it can work more. So it is more active, about 5 times as active as T4. One more function of the thyroid hormone beside what I just mentioned. So what's the function in adults? Increased metabolism. So what? Increasing all reactions, increasing oxygen consumption. So increasing respiration to give you the oxygen, increase heart rate to carry the oxygen to you. You're making more energy. You lose part of it in the form of heat. So your body temperature increase. All of this is generally speaking in adults. How about in the uterus? Does it have a special function of the uterus? Yes. In the uterus, it's responsible for maturation of the nervous system. If you are a lady, you should know that during pregnancy they keep on doing these. They call it the prenatal test. So we have to get samples of your blood. You come like once a month, or at least once every trimester, which is every 3 months. The minimum is you come once, and we have to get a blood sample. Why are you getting my blood sample? This is one of them. We're getting your blood sample to see how much thyroid hormone do you have. Not just because of you, it's the effect on you. No, it's the effect on the baby, which is a lot worse. So on you, you will be like feeling cold, you will have less energy, and so on. You feel lazy, don't have energy. Okay, this is for you as a mom, but the baby is the issue. The issue is that for the nervous system to grow normally in the fetus, you have to have normal amount of thyroid hormone. So this is one of the tests that should be done in the prenatal period. So during pregnancy, we have to take a sample every, like at least every 3 months. We take a sample and we see if the thyroid hormone is okay, you're fine. It's not only the thyroid hormone, there are other things. But in this chapter, I'm talking about the thyroid hormone. If your thyroid hormone is not okay, if it's less than normal, this baby is going to be born with mental issues, mental retardation, because the nervous system is not growing as it should. So remember this. In adulthood, I already told you, all these things are going to increase, but in the fetus, it's more of the maturation of the nervous system. The third one that comes from the thyroid is calcitonin, and calcitonin from the name calcitonin, decreasing calcium, calcitonin, lowering calcium. This is a hormone that lowers calcium level in the blood, which is the opposite of parathyroid hormone that I talked about before. So calcitonin is going to lower calcium. How? It's going to take the calcium from the blood and send it to the bone. So calcium level goes down in the blood. What else? Increase the kidney secretion of calcium in the urine. So now you take it from the blood, lose it in the urine. So you take it from the blood to the bone to store it. You take it from the blood to the urine to lose it. In both cases, calcium level goes down. And this is calcitonin. Some abnormalities that can happen to the thyroid gland is, what if the thyroid gland is hyperfunctional, it's secreting too much, or hypofunctional, which is secreting less? If it is hyper, we call it hyperthyroidism. If it is hypo, we call it hypothyroidism. However, for hyper, there are two names for that. Number one, if you know the function, you know the hyperfunction. I already gave you the function. So if you have hyperfunction, what's going to happen? It is already increasing the metabolism. Metabolism is going to increase more. It is already making you active. You will become hyperactive. It's already making you it's increasing your body temperature. You will be more sensitive to heat. Yeah, like you go to a room with the temperature that's 70 and everybody is comfortable, and you will say, this is too hot. Can we turn on the air condition? You have hyperthyroidism because it increased the overall metabolism. One of the other effects that can happen is protrusion of the eye. One of the side effects of increased thyroxine is it makes some deposit behind the eye and it pushes it out. Some people think that those people, like their eye looks bigger, they think the eye is getting bigger. It's not getting bigger. It's being pushed out. There is substance that accumulate behind the eye and push it out. So when you look at those people who say, oh, I found a person that have a bigger eye. It's not a bigger eye. It's pushed out. Hyperthyroidism. Graves' disease is the same thing, but it's happening because autoantibodies. There are antibodies that are doing a weird job. They go and bind to the TSH receptors. So they work like TSH, stimulating the thyroid, leading to hypersecretion, and it can lead to more protrusion of the eye, and we call that exophthalmia. Exo means out. Thalmia is the eye. Exophthalmos, protrusion of the eye. Goiter is the bigger size thyroid gland. Hypo, on the other hand, it can be the opposite of Graves' disease, which is Hashimoto, which is autoantibodies against thyroid. But in this case, these autoantibodies, and instead of working like the TSH, it actually destroy the thyroid gland. Hypothyroidism, if it happened in infant or adult, is different. In infant, the growth, remember that the thyroid hormone stimulate the growth of the nervous system itself. So those people will have issues. If this was a fetus, they will have mental retardation. This is another issue. But if this is an infant, not a fetus, infant, still the thyroid hormone is still stimulating the growth of the nervous system, but it's already there. So they will become just to have intellectual disabilities, not to the extent of being mentally retarded. And also the thyroid hormone stimulate the growth in general, so they will have shorter or smaller size. If that happened in adults, nothing much. You'll just be sensitive to colds, and those people having hypothyroidism, if you go to the room and the temperature is perfect, everybody's saying that's amazing, that's perfect, and you come in and say, oh my God, this is too cold. Can you turn on the heat? It's too much, and so on. Simple goiter is simply deficiency of the thyroid hormone due to iodine deficiency. Iodine deficiency. Remember, both T3 and T4, they have iodine. Whether it is 3 or 4. In both cases, you have to have iodine. If you do not have it, you will have goiter. And goiter is the gland itself will become bigger, but the function goes down because you're not secreting enough. And why it does become bigger? Because you don't have enough iodine, so you cannot make enough thyroid. Negative feedback will lead to increase TSH and stimulate the gland, and it will tell the gland, why you're not secreting enough thyroid hormone? Secrete more, secrete more, secrete more. The size of the gland will increase, and we call that goiter. So this is Graves. This is infantile hypothyroidism. Look at this infant, how he doesn't look normal. And this is the simple endemic goiter. They call it endemic because some areas, they have an endemic issue and they don't have enough iodine, and like some areas in the world, they do not treat. Here in America and most of the countries, we add iodine to the water, and actually you see the iodinated salt. If you're going to buy salt, a lot of them are called iodinated salt. So, and it's already in the water. So endemic goiter is rare only in certain locations when they still are not convinced that they should add a little bit of iodine to their water. Parathyroid are two pairs, which is 4 together, are in the back of the thyroid gland. These tiny purple in the back. And they secrete parathyroid hormone, also known as parathormone. And this is basically the opposite of calcitonin. It increases calcium level in the blood, automatically increasing phosphate. Both of them, they go together. Calcium and phosphate, they come together. How are you going to increase calcium? And if calcium goes up, phosphate is going to go down, because even though you absorb them together, but when the level of calcium increase, the phosphate is going to decrease. How that's going to happen? The parathyroid hormone is going to work on the following. Two of them are similar to calcitonin that I already mentioned. One of them is to decrease kidney excretion of calcium. It will tell the kidney, don't lose calcium. I want it to increase it. The second one is taking the calcium from the bone to the blood, which is the opposite of calcitonin. This is two. Number three, it's going to stimulate vitamin D. And vitamin D, also known as calcitriol, this vitamin D, the active form is called calcitriol, and this is the one that's going to act on the kidney to reabsorb calcium, and it increase calcium absorption in the digestive system as well. So here are the actions on the bone, on the kidney, on the intestine. You increase absorption of the calcium from the intestine, under the effect of active vitamin D that is activated in the liver. So vitamin D, we actually make it in the skin and we send it to the liver to become active vitamin D. I'm sorry, not the liver, the kidney. You send it to the kidney to make active vitamin D that's going to increase absorption of calcium. This is one. How about the kidney? Decrease calcium loss in the kidney. You take it back. In the bone, you take calcium from the bone, send it back to the blood. So this is a comparison between hyper and hypo. A hyper, unfortunately, most of the time, it is a tumor. And hypo, most of the time, hyper and hypo parathyroidism. If you have hyperparathyroidism, you're secreting too much parathyroid, so obviously your calcium level is going to go up. Since you're taking it from the bone will become weaker. Most of the time, it is a tumor in the parathyroid. Hypo, most of the time, it is surgical removal. It happens, those surgeons who are not experienced enough, when they cut, if they have to cut a piece of the thyroid gland, these parathyroid are tiny in the back, they can end up cutting like two of them or something. So, or injury, you have an injury in the neck and this is too tiny, so you can hurt. And if that's the case, you will have low calcium level. For hyper, you have high calcium level. The next is suprarenal gland. The suprarenal gland is a gland above the kidney. There are two parts, cortex and the medulla. The cortex, which is this cover outside, the medulla is this portion inside. The medulla secrete two hormones, which is epinephrine and norepinephrine. Epinephrine is about 80%, also known as adrenaline. And it's going to basically do sympathetic function that we talked about before. Imagine you are in the middle of the fight. It's very close to each other. I wouldn't focus a lot about the difference between epinephrine and norepinephrine. This is too much. Just remember that the adrenal medulla secretes epinephrine and norepinephrine, which is kind of similar to the sympathetic. The adrenal cortex, the cover from outside, on the other hand, secretes aldosterone, secrete cortisol, and secrete some androgen, which is not very important. This is more important to remember. Aldosterone and cortisol. Aldosterone, you have to know what is this, and you have to know the function. Aldosterone is a hormone that reabsorb sodium from the kidney. It go to the kidney and tell the kidney, when you see sodium, don't lose it in the urine. Take it back. Reabsorb sodium. And the rule of the thumb is sodium is always followed by chloride. Just take it as a rule. So if you reabsorb sodium, you're automatically reabsorbing chloride. It's like a shadow. Reabsorb sodium, reabsorb chloride. If you throw away sodium, you throw away chloride. This is the shadow. Chloride is the shadow of sodium. And remember the water osmosis. So if you are doing that, so that's the primary function. sodium reabsorption from the kidney. Remember this. Sodium reabsorption from the kidney. This is the function. Then understand the consequences. If you reabsorb sodium from the kidney, you automatically reabsorb chloride. Now I have sodium chloride, which is salt. Water is going to follow because the water follow osmosis. So when you take salt in, the water will also move in. Cortisol is what we hear about cortisone. The cortisone, if you're familiar with this. Cortisone is going to increase glucose synthesis, so you have hyperglycemia. It decrease protein synthesis, so you lose weight. Increase fat, so increase fat and glucose, and you decrease protein. Remember this, you have three things: carbohydrate, fat, and protein. It decreases the protein, but increase fat and glucose. Aldosterone, which I just mentioned, is one of the secretions of one of the zones called zona glomerulosa, which one of the, the cortex from outside itself is 3 zones, like this. Like the cover is 3 layers, 1, 2, 3. Glomerulosa, fasciculata, and reticularis. What is the secretion here? Aldosterone. The aldosterone is one of the mineralocorticoids. You need to remember this. Mineralocorticoid. Mineralo is coming from minerals. We're talking about sodium followed by chloride. You have to know this. There is a line under this. It's underlined. So you have to remember it. What's mineralocorticoids? Aldosterone is the most important one. Function, sodium reabsorption. The next zone, which is fasciculata, secretes something called glucocorticoid, most importantly, cortisol. So is there a difference between cortisol and glucocorticoid? Yes. Glucocorticoid is, generally speaking, the secretions of this zone. The most important of the glucocorticoid is cortisone. Zona glomerulosa secrete mineralocorticoids. The most important mineralocorticoid is aldosterone. Remember also that cortisol that we just talked about, is a powerful anti-inflammatory. Next part is renin. Renin is a hormone that's secreted from the kidney. When your blood volume goes down for some reason, like you have dehydration, you lost some blood volume goes down, less oxygen go to the kidney is going to respond by secreting something called renin. Renin is going to activate something called angiotensin. That's why we call it renin-angiotensin. It activates something called angiotensinogen, which will stimulate angiotensin. Angiotensin 1 will become angiotensin 2, and this angiotensin 2 is going to promote the secretion of aldosterone that we already mentioned, plus increased secretion of ADH. So this is renin. Cortisol is secreted by the same pathway, negative feedback. If you secrete it too much, you're going to decrease it. And the actions, I mentioned it already, you decrease one thing, you increase 2 things, and anti-inflammatory. You need to remember this. And you also need to remember this, that this is what we call it the stress hormone. Stress hormone. And that explains when you are stressed, it will tell you don't stress yourself because you will get diabetes. You will get hyperglycemia. This is what they mean. When you are stressed, the hormone of stress is cortisol. When you secrete cortisol, it's going to increase glucose and fat level and decrease protein level. Okay? If you have issues with the adrenal cortex, the issue can be just like everything else. It can be hypersecretion or hyposecretion. You're secreting too much or too low. If you're secreting too low, not enough, we call that Addison disease. Addison disease. And Addison disease, you're not secreting enough of these secretions, including cortisone, including aldosterone. So obviously, remember the function of those two, you're doing less function. Cushing syndrome, on the other hand, is the opposite, increased secretion. So same thing, if the cortisone is increased and aldosterone is increased. Both of those are secreted more, especially like if there is a tumor or something, whether the tumor is actually in the cortex or in the pituitary gland, it's going to increase the function of those two. So it's going to lead to muscle wasting, loss of bone, increased glucose, which is one of the action of cortisone, water retention. It's one of the action of aldosterone, increased blood pressure because you're increasing your water and blood size and so on. Pancreas is the one that I mentioned that have both endocrine and exocrine function. The endocrine function, which matter now, you have to remember that it does both of them. It's both endo and exo. What's the endo, which is what matter now? It is glucagon, insulin, and somatostatin. Alpha cells secrete glucagon. Beta cells secrete insulin. Insulin, obviously, we all know some people take insulin shots. Diabetic people, diabetes mellitus, they take insulin to decrease glucose level. So what's the function of insulin? Decrease glucose level. What's the function of glucagon? Increase. So the same pancreas have two different types of cells. Alpha cells secrete glucagon, beta cells secrete insulin. So you're secreting two things and these are the opposite. Yes, there is a balance between those. If glucose goes up, you increase more insulin. If the glucose goes down, you secrete more glucagon. So you always have a balance. Plus somatostatin, which have another effect on the growth of the body. We look at this. This is the pancreas. This whole pancreas is the main thing is the exocrine function, which is this. Remember, you have a duct here, but which is secreting the digestive juice that goes to the duodenum, like all these enzymes and secretions and bicarbonate, all of that. But you do have an island. An island in Greek is called islet of Langerhans. Obviously, this is who discovered this island. He found a tiny island within the pancreas that's secreting the three secretions that I just talked about: glucagon, insulin, and somatostatin. Somatostatin, it's just regulate the carbohydrates in adults, but I wouldn't worry much about it. It inhibits the secretions of the other two, so it play a role in regulating those two. But it's more important to know the function of insulin. I just told you that insulin decreases glucose. It's extremely important to know how do you decrease glucose. It literally take it from the blood and push it into the cells, feeding the cells. This is one. Number two, it take that glucose, put multiple glucose units together to make a bigger molecule of carbohydrates, something like glycogen, and this will be stored in the liver. In both cases, aren't you taking the glucose away from the blood? Whether you take it from the blood, push it into the cells, but you take it out of the blood, or you take it from the blood, put them together, and make something else out of it, but it's away from the blood anyway. So in both cases, it's going to decrease blood glucose level, but how? This is extremely important. So this is insulin, and the most important thing is those two functions. Glucagon is doing the opposite. So if the blood glucose level is fine, that's okay. If it increases, you secrete insulin because of the negative feedback. If it is decreased, you secrete glucagon. These are some clinical applications. Diabetes mellitus is a very important, by the way, clinical application. I told you before, and that's the importance of attending and watching the videos, that when I see clinical applications that are important to know, I tell you, and you have to know it. Diabetes mellitus is in all cases, it's increased level of glucose. This is the main thing, increased level of glucose. Why did you increase level of glucose? You don't have enough insulin? Not necessarily. If you don't have enough insulin, this is type 1, and we call it the infantile type, usually in more, or childhood, the childhood type. Some people have normal amount of insulin. They're still diabetic. Why? Because the cells are not sensitive. So the issue is not that you're not having enough insulin. The issue is You do have insulin, but the cells are not sensitive. So the insulin goes just normal amount of insulin going to the cells, trying to do the job, but the cells are ignoring the insulin, not responding. So are the cells going to take their glucose? No, no, it's not going to take it. So these are the two types: child onset and adult onset. Type 1, type 2. Type 1, you don't secrete enough insulin. Type 2, you do secrete enough, but it's not working because of less sensitivity. The cells are not responding. So now since the cells are not going to take that glucose for whatever reason, either there is no enough insulin or you do have enough insulin, but it's not doing the job because the cells are not responding. In all cases, follow the scenario to understand this. You don't have enough insulin, or insulin is not effective. In both cases, whatever the reason is, in both cases, glucose will not be pushed into the cells the way it should, enough. So now glucose accumulates in the blood. It doesn't disappear into the cells. It accumulates. We call that hyperglycemia. This is one. When it adds up an increased level in the blood, we call it hyperglycemia, it will start to go to the urine. The kidney will say, okay, I need to help. So I need to get rid of that extra glucose. I will get rid of it in the urine, and we call that glucosuria. So remember, hyperglycemia, glucosuria. What else? When you push that or get rid of that glucose into the urine, by osmosis, the water will follow the glucose. Osmotic. So you're making more urine now. We call that polyuria. When you make more urine, the volume of the blood will go down because you take the water out of it into the urine. So the blood level is going to shrink. You don't have enough water. You get dehydrated. So this is another thing. So it's all linked together. Just understand the idea. There is an issue with insulin. Not enough or not working. In both cases, glucose does not enter the cells. Glucose accumulate, hyperglycemia. Go to the urine, glucosuria. By osmosis, you're losing more water. Polyuria. Poly means a lot. Urea means urine. Polyuria. You don't have, you start to dehydrate it. So you feel thirsty. Your hypothalamus will say, you don't have enough water. I want you to feel thirsty. So you feel thirsty. So these are the main function. And the last one is, if the glucose didn't enter the cells, don't you think your cells are going to be hungry? You feel hungry all the time. Not only that you feel thirsty, you feel hungry because your cells are not getting enough glucose. So what are the cells are going to do if that's the case? The cells will say, I'm going to die. For some reason, I'm not getting glucose in. I need to eat. You're not giving me glucose. I'm going to switch and use fat and protein. But the problem is the product of using those for energy is not good for the body. So we have type 1, we call it juvenile onset or child onset or juvenile onset or insulin dependent, which is under 20. And this is the minority of the cases. It's like 5 to 10%. The vast majority of the cases are actually type 2. So for type 1, you don't make enough insulin, I give you insulin. And those are the people that unfortunately they live their entire life injecting insulin. Actually, they started to solve this issue by implanting something under the skin that can stay for a couple of months. But generally speaking, you give them insulin anyway. You don't make enough insulin, I'll give you insulin. The patch can also work. They are working on it, and they started actually to use it, but not on a wide basis. The type 2, I can't give you insulin because it's useless. You're not responding to insulin. You don't have an issue with the amount of insulin in the first place. So I can't give you insulin. I need to do something else. What is that something? Decrease the diet, basically diet, most importantly diet. So basically, if your blood glucose level is increasing a little bit, I will tell you, okay, diet. Don't eat a lot of carbohydrates and eat a lot of proteins. So if that's the case, you will not have that hyperglycemia and you will not have these symptoms of polyuria and thirsty and all these issues. You will not, dehydration, all that. You will not have it because you're not getting a lot of glucose, so it's not going to accumulate. If that is not the case and your blood sugar is shooting up, I have to give you medication. but they call that the conservative approach. That I'll tell you, can you actually cut the carbohydrate and eat more protein and exercise so that you're going to lower down the amount of glucose? Why don't you give me insulin? Because you don't need it. This is type 2. You have enough. It's not working. If I give you more, it's waste. So you need to exercise so that you use that extra glucose. You need to eat less to decrease the glucose. If you have normal amount of glucose, level in the glucose in the blood, you're fine then. So this is a conservative approach. If that's not working, you're not exercising, you're not doing the job, or the glucose is too much. If that's the case, I have to give you oral hypoglycemics. There are tablets that can be used. Other glands, just know what's a secretion. Pineal gland secretes melatonin. We talked about that in the nervous system, but know it again. Pineal gland, melatonin. Circadian rhythm. If you don't have enough melatonin, you have sleep disturbances. Thymus secretes something called thymosin, and that thymosin is important for the maturation of T lymphocytes, so it is important for immunity and body defense. Reproductive organs, the ovaries, secrete what? Estrogen and progestin. Testes secrete testosterone only. So testes secrete one secretion only, testosterone. The equivalent to that in females coming from the ovaries is estrogen. How about progestin? So females secrete 2, the ovaries secrete 2, males secrete only 1. Testosterone, by the way, testosterone is not the same as androgen. Testosterone is the most important and the most active type of androgen. So androgen is like fruits. Testosterone is like apple. There is a difference between apple and fruits. So androgen, fruits. Testosterone, one of the fruits. Apple, the most important fruit, or the most common one. How about progestin or progesterone secreted from females? Pro, I mentioned before, pro means with or stimulate. Gesterone is coming from gestation, which is pregnancy. So that's the hormone of pregnancy, and that's why it's not secreted in males. Placenta also secrete the same two, estrogen and progesterone, plus gonadotropin, which is FSH and so on. Digestive system and the heart and the kidney also have some other secretions, but we're not going to talk about it now. The last thing here is the stress. Stress, if you are stressed, you're going to secrete different secretions, but it depends on the magnitude of the stress and how long. Stress can be physical, psychological, can be either this or that. But what's going to happen is something that's called the general adaptation or general stress syndrome. Here's what's happening. Imagine that you are in a fight. Somebody's fighting you. In the first few minutes, you start with a stage that's called alarm phase. This is the phase that starts immediately. This is the sympathetic part, like somebody's attacking you and you're going to attack him back to defend yourself. And this is sympathetic, meaning you're fighting, sympathetic. Heart rate increase, respiratory rate increase, concentration increase, metabolism increase, energy increase. You send the blood to your blood vessels and so on. Whatever your blood pressure increase, bronchi dilate so you can breathe better, respiratory rate increase, your eye dilate more, you send the blood to the, and all of these, just imagine that you are in the middle of the fight. It is sympathetic, and the hormone here is epinephrine. What if you're fighting a minute, 2, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, half an hour? Like more people came and they got into the fight and you continue to fight. Unfortunately, the sympathetic nervous system can help you for certain period of time, like half an hour or something. You cannot use your sympathetic because it exhausts everything. It literally utilize all your energy and utilize everything. Vast majority, it will send it to the fight. It will help you to fight. So everything else is waiting for you. So you cannot use that for a long time. This is the alarm phase only. If that's extended, you cannot use the alarm phase anymore. You go to the resistant phase, which is long term. And if that's the case, cortisone is the one that's going to kick in instead of epinephrine. And cortisone will help you to get some glucose specifically for your brain. and you get some renin to water retention, increase your heart rate. So it's kind of alternative, but it can wait for you for some time. Uh, if you exceeded that, you will go to failure. Your body system is going to fail. So this is called the general adaptation syndrome. And I already give you the most important parts. You don't have to go all through all these details. Just understand that it goes in 3 different stages: alarming phase, resistant phase, and then failure. Can you continue to fight like for 15 hours? Of course not. If you continue, you use epinephrine in the first like half an hour or an hour, and you cannot continue. And then you started to use cortisone that was going to help you with the fight. But if that extended more than that, you can have a kidney failure, heart failure, or something like this. The thing here is the lifespan changes, everything deteriorates. Endocrine function deteriorates. Hormones less. Kidney become less sensitive to ADH. Calcitonin decrease, hormones decrease, your bone become weaker, your muscles become weaker, insulin resistance can develop. So if you are younger age, you're less likely to develop type 2. As you grow older, you have more chances that your body cells become resistant. So it increases with age. Thymosin that come from the thymus, and it stimulates, maturate the T lymphocytes, it goes less. So you name melatonin goes down, which come from the pineal glands, so that you don't have that regular sleep cycle, and so on. So everything deteriorates, and that's it for this part.